photon science, holographic universe simulation arguments, and some other esoteric subjects. And I'm a student of Dan Winter. And today we are going to talk about secrets of the divine proportion. We'll talk about golden ratio, fractality, toroidal fields, and the universal frequency cascade. And I would like to, before starting, I would like to thank Roger Green for organizing this beautiful conference. We have learned a lot from all the speakers, and we are still continuing. Thanks, Roger, for organizing this. So the history of golden ratio, when we look at the history, as in most cases, we depend on the written documents. And with the golden ratio, the earliest written documents take us back to Euclid and Plato, but we also see them in architecture artifacts like the pyramids and some temples as well. And the philosophy of the golden ratio, we started learning those from the Pythagorean schools, and it came to our day through the Neoplatonist schools and Renaissance and so on. And from the Pythagorean perspective, he was looking at the whole number systems from three perspectives. The first one was the quantitative perspective, which was the whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4. And the second one was the mathematical algorithmic, which uses the 4 calculations. And the third one was the qualitative side of those numbers, or more like the symbolic perspectives, which we find definitions of golden ratio. So today, in our educational systems, we mostly forget about the qualitative perspective of it, and we mostly focus on the quantitative side as we are learning the that specific perspective only in our educational system. And I would like to refer to Steve Bass and his beautiful book, Beauty, Memory, and Unity, where he delves into the philosophical history of those sacred ratios. And it's a great book that I would recommend everyone. When we look at the brief history of golden ratio, so we know that the Egyptians have used the golden ratio in the design of the great pyramids. And Sumerians have used the golden ratio in some of their tablets. We'll talk about that, especially in the tablet of Shamash. We see those. Not only the ratios, but also they fit to the universal frequency cascade. And Greeks have used the golden ratio in the design of temples, Parthenon being the most famous one. And Plato, in his views on natural science and cosmology presented in his Timaeus, he considered the golden section to be the most binding of all mathematical relationships and key to the physics of the cosmos. That's an important statement here. And then Euclid, in Elements, referred to dividing a line at the 0.618 point as dividing a line in the extreme and mean ratio. So this gave rise to the use of the term mean in the golden mean. And he also linked it to the construction of a pentagram. And I want to also show some illustrations from the same book here, where he illustrated the golden sections with some drawings. Also later, Leonardo Fibonacci discovered the unusual properties of the numerical series that now bears his name. And then later, Leonardo da Vinci provided illustrations using the golden mean extensively for a dissertation published by Luca Pacioli in 1509 entitled The Divine Proportion. And later, we see from Kepler the famous solar system model based on Platonic solids. So this is the brief history of golden ratio in a nutshell from the earlier times. But when we look at today, with the current developments of technology and science, we can see those statements were right on. We see and we can measure golden ratio in many different areas. I'm going to change the place of this video so that I can see this better. All right. So while working on the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, researchers from the Frankfurt in Berlin have the first time observed and measured the signatures of a nanoscale symmetry showing the same attributes as the golden ratio. So we know that golden ratio is also displayed in the quantum field. And this also brought the Nobel Prize. And also in nanoscales, because golden ratio is crucial in molecular biology as well, researchers are working on ways to implement this understanding in molecular nanotechnology. And Dan Winter has proved that the radii of hydrogen is perfectly proportionate to golden ratio. The electron shells to each other are arranged by golden ratio. And you can find more at fractalfield.com/hydrogen. And also, when we look at the super atoms, they have very interesting functions and unique qualities like zero electrical resistance and superconductivity. And well, basically, they share a common quality, which is golden ratio. In their molecular arrangements, they all have golden ratio, and one may ask why all the super atoms who have unique qualities like zero electrical resistance have golden ratio in their molecular structures, because golden ratio is the only ratio that allows constructive wave interference at the center. And charge distribution efficiency is something that nature uses to optimize its charge distribution through a specific method which we call a Fibonacci sequence. So pinecone is a symbolic representation of that, and we see that pinecone has two systems of spirals. One is 13 spirals to one direction, and the other is 8 spirals to the other directions, which are in line with the Fibonacci sequence numbers. And we know that the Fibonacci sequence, when we take the sequence and divide the numbers to each other, we see that the result perfects itself towards golden ratio. Also, golden ratio in the universe, dodecahedral space topology as an explanation for weak wide angle temperature correlations in the cosmic microwave background. So what they did was to map microwave background, and they applied different geometries to the background, and they noticed that only the dodecahedron geometry fit perfectly to the microwave background, meaning the universe shape is a dodecahedron, as also published in the Nature magazine. And also we see golden ratio in quasicrystals. So the discovery of the first quasicrystal brought the Nobel Prize in 2011. And picture on the top right is the potential energy surface for silver depositing on aluminum, palladium, and manganese. So quasicrystal surface, we see the pentagonal shapes, which a perfect golden ratio. So we see the golden ratio in many different systems and different areas. It's like the next Nobel Prize goes to the person who doesn't find golden ratio in a self-organizing system. And this is the famous Stradivarius phi chambers. And a Stradivarius is one of the violins or other string instruments built by the Italian Antonio Stradivari during the 17th and 18th centuries. And you can see an example of the violin on the left-hand side, where you see the golden ratio proportions on the violin. So these ratios were specifically used to optimize the sound experience and the acoustics. And Stradivarius was well known for using golden sections in the design of his violins. And those phi chambers is the age-old practice of creating resonant chambers that suppress the formation of unwanted standing waves and reflection. And we know the standing waves from cymatics that when you apply specific frequencies or tones on a flat surface, you will see the formation of specific geometries because of the standing waves. So the best rectangular concert halls use golden ratio proportions in their dimensions. The standing wave reflection simply cannot be sustained when one of the three dimensions in a container is at or even near a golden ratio to another. So today the cutting edge hi-fi companies, they create speakers based on golden ratio or concert halls based on golden ratio. So this is the perfect way for a sound experience. And we know that there are different wave systems like transverse waves, longitudinal waves, sound waves, light waves. So this is just an example from the sound waves. I think it's quite instructive in understanding the science based on other waves as well. So if this is so, if this can create such an optimized experience, then maybe we can understand why this was also used in other systems or temples or in other physics. And also we learned from Dan Winter's physics is that when he made an experiment to analyze which frequencies create the most constructive wave interference and which ones the most destructive, he noticed that, I don't know if you can see my cursor. Do you see my cursor, Roger? So, right at the...
yes, we can see it okay. Yep.
All right, 1.618 point, you can see that this exact point is the point for most constructive wave interference. And whereas on the point of 2, you will see that it's the most destructive wave interference. So it isolates charge, basically. So, Roger, I'm going to zoom out because I cannot see the headlines of the slides of my presentation. Oops. Let's see how do I do that.
We can see, okay, up to you.
Yeah, because of the arrangement of the Zoom. So I'll continue showing you the slides like these, if it's okay, so that I can also see the slides on the left side, see which one's coming up. All right. So understanding the exponents of golden ratio is very instructive in understanding almost all of the things that we are talking in this global conference, because most of the technologies that we are talking are based on understanding of the exponents of golden ratio, mostly tuned to Planck. So the containment of both the arithmetic progression and the geometric progression makes golden ratio unique among the universe of mathematics, because golden ratio is the only ratio which allows both arithmetic and geometric progression, thus allowing itself to become constructive wave interference. So thus, it's the only solution to construct the wave interference, basically. And in wave systems, we understand that in a negantropic wave collapse, where waves come together, we understand that the waves meet with each other based on golden ratio as they reach to the center point. And so how can we understand this better? Maybe we can look at the geometry of the Pentagon and the star. Now, star and the Pentagon has this perfect golden ratio relationship in its dimensions. And so this is the geometry of constructed wave interference. So as we said, pi is the only ratio which allows wavelengths to both add and multiply constructively. If we continue to draw the star pattern inside the inner Pentagon, so we will continue to have constructed wave interference golden ratio going down at the center to this implosive field. So this is the map to create a bioactive field, basically. And in this slide, this is the physics of waves in sacred geometry. The first geometry is the famous phase conjugation geometry from Dan Winter. And the second one on the left is perfect compression creates perfect charge distribution. As we said, when the waves connect constructively, they allow perfect charge distribution. And the third one is the Dan Winter's famous graphic from the Holy Grail of fusion implosion gravity making. And you can notice two golden ratio spirals coming together. Actually, they are in the opposing sides. When looking at from this axis, you will see them making a heart shape, a fractal heart. So golden ratio is also found in biology, in our DNA extensively. So the fourth geometry is the DNA with displaying the golden ratio dimensions on it. And then on the fifth one is perfect embedding of harmonics in DNA. Basically, it shows the frequency map of the DNA while braiding itself. So it first braids to a thin thread, and then a thin rope, and then braids to a fat rope, and then a fatter one. So each braid adds an additional frequency. And we say the number of harmonics in your DNA, fractal antenna, ascend by golden ratio when the spin density braid implosion enables that compression to be implosive, negantropic, and centripetal. This is from Dan Winter. So basically, when we are in a blissful state, through meditation or some other practice, we hypothesize that our DNA starts braiding in golden ratio discipline. And the sixth geometry is the cross section of the DNA, and the seventh one is the ratchet-hadron dodecahedron model of ratcheted dodecahedron model of DNA helix. And then through the Renaissance, we started seeing all sorts of Platonic solids, starting with Leonardo da Vinci's famous book, which was sponsored by Luca Pacioli. And in this diagram at the top, we can see the Platonic solid progressions. And among the 5 lines, I divided 3 and 2 based on golden ratio containment. The top 3, tetrahedron, octahedron, cube, they don't have golden ratio, and the bottom 2, icosahedron and dodecahedron, they do have golden ratio, and they are the dual Platonic solids to each other. But we don't want to say that because some have golden ratio and some not, doesn't mean that one is good and the other is evil. The universe just uses them functionally when needed, when necessary. And at the bottom geometries, we see some related extensions of those platonic solids. Like on the bottom left, we see the famous Kepler's solar system model, and the bottom right is the dodecaecosa energy grid of the Earth. And these illustrations are taken from the Sacred Geometric poster that is available at geometricmodels.com. So as I said, Renaissance has had extensive displays of golden ratio. This one is Michelangelo, the creation of Adam. This is from Leonardo da Vinci, John the Baptist. And there are so many examples of paintings with golden ratio embedded inside. This one is one of the paintings that I like a lot. Now, if you can notice, this golden ratio division happens here. You see there's this slight, there's this stick that you can see at the back. So it was hidden. It wasn't out there. It was just hidden. So when you calculate the golden ratio division, it just sits on the stick, and the horizontal one just goes through the bottom of the window, and the epicenter of it is the Pope here, and who is signing an important document in this palace. So this was an interesting painting that I found. Another example from a recent artist, Henry Gillard Gilliandoni, shows John Dee performing an experiment before Queen Elizabeth I. And you can also see the golden ratio proportions going through the corner of the walls, through the eyes of John Dee, through the third eye of Queen Elizabeth. And so it's like for your third eye only, maybe.
It's going through the gold. I was making gold.
As well, yeah. There are so many details. And so this is also used in the construction of, or the settlement of cities, countries. We know that Washington, D.C. is one of the examples that in relation to the dodecaecosa energy grid of the Earth. And another one that I recently noticed is the capital of Turkey. Not only the capital, but the management district where the parliament sits. Çankaya is exactly on the golden ratio point when we calculate the latitude and longitude. We see that the Çankaya district, which is one of the 911 districts in Turkey, sits exactly on the golden ratio point. So I'm sure the founder of Turkish Republic, Atatürk, knew about golden ratio when he decided to make Ankara the capital. Most probably he wanted to create a sustainable country, so to speak. And we see golden ratio in temples, churches. This one is from Budapest, the Matthias Church. You see the divisions here. It's the same church. So almost all of the churches that I have seen, like when they have a model sitting outside, I always take out my ruler and start measuring the proportions. In almost all of them, I can say that I find perfect golden ratio divisions among the columns in relationship to each other. And you can see the scaling here. This is another one from Poland, Krakow. This is the Saints Peter and Paul Church. And we see them in temples, the Temple of Apollo, Didymus, Parthenon, Athens. Just bear with me for a second. So the interesting thing about the temple of Didim, the temple of Apollo, and Parthenon is that they share a very interesting quality. So yes, they both have golden ratio. So the longer side is the shorter side times golden ratio to the power of 2. So, and we can see this exact ratio in the two temples that I show you. And I noticed that when you take a dodecahedron and look at the sides of the dodecahedron and the exact opposing sides to one another, you will notice that there is the same rectangular relationship. So if you can notice this shorter side here and the longer side here, the longer side is the shorter side times golden ratio to the power of 2, exactly in the same physics that they planned the temples. So I told you that when the chambers or concert halls for experiencing the sound music is designed by golden ratio to amplify, to optimize the sound experiences. And in the same way, I believe such ratios were used in temple design to amplify the intention that was put in there. And so they could be working on many different things. Maybe they were working on energies, they were doing rituals, they were doing different things, but whatever they were doing, they wanted to amplify the work being done there. So I think that was why such ratios were used there. And I don't want to narrow it down to golden ratio only. There are many different dynamics and factors of building a temple. You know, there's the selection of the land, the electromagnetic fields, mapping of the earth, the selection of the materials, the geometry, and there are so many things. But because our subject is golden ratio, I'm going through the golden ratio. And the Stonehenge, they have recently noticed in an article that it was also used to optimize the sound waves. I realized that the headline stayed Turkish here, sorry about that, so it says Stonehenge and sound waves optimization. And I would also like to talk about the magnetic fields, electromagnetic fields. And we know that electromagnetic fields have two poles, North Pole and the South Pole, and they create a field effect like a toroidal field. And in this field, we notice two opposing forces. One is the centrifugal force, and one is the centripetal force. So it's like when you throw a stone to a containment of water, a pool, you will notice that the waves tend to expand or explode. And when we look at a whirlpool, we notice that the waves tend to collect at the center, an implosive field. So this is centrifugal versus centripetal forces. And it's the same principles with a toroidal field. You will notice that in one side of the toroidal field, you will see a centrifugal part, and on the other side, you will see a centripetal force. So the centrifugal part will be the yin part, and this is biomagnetic north attracted to south pole, and the other side is vice versa. And imagining or visualizing a vortex field, a whirlpool, is very instructive in understanding a specific function of the toroidal field. And we know that, we know from the physics that the wormholes have the similar qualities, that they were actually taking energy from one dimension to another one. So they were the transduction of energy points. And this brings us to the form of catenoid. So the catenoid is the negative surface that we see on the torus field. So especially the inner side, which is the negative surface, is composed of the catenoid. And in physics, catenoid was used to describe the function of transduction in wormholes for energy, higher dimensional to influx into our 4D space and time with its unique topology, basically. And we see how that sits on the toroidal field here. So there are two curvatures on a toroidal field, a negative curvature and the positive curvature. So the catenoid is the negative curvature. And I would also like to refer to Glenn Ryan and his studies about the toroidal fields. And Glenn Ryan, in his article called Biological Effects of Quantum Fields and Their Role in the Natural Healing Process, explains the toroidal fields in relation to biofields, free energy devices, and healing processes. And Glenn proposes that a biofield is composed of at least 3 layers, as we can see in the picture here, comprising force field, potential fields, and quantum fields embedded within one another like a twister. So his model further proposes that healing information originates from a higher dimensional source and is transformed into biologically usable electromagnetic energy as it propagates through the layers of the biofield. And we know that the toroidal fields also surround the Earth, the plasma field, the electromagnetic field, in the, as we've seen in the twister geometries. And we also learned from a recent article, a scientific article, that our consciousness is directly linked with the electromagnetic field of the Earth. So evidence of magnetoreception in humans suggests subconscious ability to respond to Earth's magnetic field. But what we say is that we are not only connected with the Earth, we are connected with all universe, from the subatomic particles to solar systems and the Milky Way galaxy and the universe, because we are all perfectly embedded. And another interesting notice is that when we look at the map of the local void inside the Milky Way around the solar system, we see a space here. So the solar system sits at the center. This is the local void inside the Milky Way. And if you can put a toroidal field, you will notice that it will sit quite nicely inside, and giving us a clue that a clue of perfect embedding between each other. So universe, solar system, smaller scales, Earth, human consciousness. And during one of our trips in 2016, thanks to Roger Green for organizing the Prague tour, I was fortunate to visit the Hvezda Star Summer Palace, which is embedded on a huge toroidal field. So this palace was specifically designed to sit on a toroidal field. This is the underground level of the palace. And I'm sure this palace was, I think this was done during 1400s. I forgot the name of the king at that time, Rudolf II maybe. And I'm sure they were exercising interesting rituals here in this palace. I have experienced it myself, and I can say that it was very dense in energy. I experienced it firsthand. So, going back to constructive wave interference and the implosive fields, understanding fractality is very instructive because the waves come together in a fractal way. So it's part of the physics of fractality. And we know that fractal is a geometrical and mathematical set that exhibits a repeating and self-similar pattern displayed at every scale. We can call it scale invariant or self-embedding. So we see this everywhere in nature, basically. And recently, scientists discovered fractal patterns in a quantum material. So the researchers identified a fractal-like pattern within the texture of the material's magnetic domains here. And some examples from the nature. So we say that a fractal field based on golden ratio breeds charge becomes a bioactive field. So as said, when waves gather together in a fractal way based on golden ratio, they automatically create self-organizing systems. And one of the examples of that is the solar system. We see that the orbits of planets in relationship to each other are exactly arranged or set by golden ratio through the Fibonacci numbers. As you can see the calculations, it's available at spirasolaris.ca. And another self-organizing system, our brainwaves have perfect golden ratio when we are tuned to this meditative, blissful state. And you can measure this through the application and this headset developed by Dan Winter and Patrick Both. You can find it at flameinmind.com. So yeah, what we have talked until now is golden ratio and fractal fields. But now the critical point is that, yes, there are golden ratio everywhere. We have heard it many times. It's everywhere. It's very nice. It creates a bioactive field. But there's a second dimension to it, which is related to the universal frequency cascade. So this is the negantropic frequency distribution perfected by golden ratio tuned to Planck, formulated by Dan Winter, and a couple of presenters already covered this subject today and yesterday. I want to go over it again. So as we said, the waves collapse to this single point, which we call Planck distance, Planck time, or Planck space. So Planck distance is the distance that we cannot break into two. That's the smallest scale that we can reach in the universe. And all the critical self-organizing systems are created along this path, along this expanded path, through the conjunction of specific waves which connect at exact golden ratio points. So we can visualize that at every connection point, we can visualize a whirlpool creating this implosive field effect. This is like a frequency map. Because, okay, before going there, let's remind us that Nikola Tesla's famous quote. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And I also propose to think in terms of frequency and vibration, and that's what we are doing. And another quote from Dan Winter, perfect operation creates perfect charge distribution. So in each one of those conjunction points, the charge is perfectly distributed because these are the perfect compressional points at the golden ratio sections. This is why all the critical biological systems from photosynthesis, ADP, ATP, hydrogen radii, to heavenly bodies and motions like the Earth year, Earth-Venus year, Schumann period, precession of equinox and galactic year, they all sit in this exact cascade. As we said, golden ratio based with fractality, they create this self-organizing negantropic bioactive field. That's why those systems are able to sustain themselves in those specific frequencies. And this is why those specific frequencies are used extensively in the new technology, healing technology, I believe the TerraFi, and other technologies that are developed by Roger and Dan. They have this understanding of this science. And we see those in some of the Sumerian tablets as well. Now we know that the tablet of Shamash contained golden ratio. We knew it, many researchers covered that. But what they didn't cover was that specific tablet exactly fits, almost exactly fits to the universal frequency cascade. So the measurements in green are based on the sacred food, charge resonant, phase conjugate, which are explained first by John Michel's and later by Dan Winter's equations independently. And measurements in black are actual measurements in the British Museum. So you will notice there is like 1 centimeter difference between the universal frequency cascade and the actual measurements. And I suggest maybe we can explain the difference in size by the depreciation of the tablet over time. I don't know. And one last point is that I have recently noticed that the Coronation Square in Hagia Sophia in ancient Constantinople, recently currently Istanbul, Turkey. This Coronation Square and the dimensions of it, they also fit to the Planck length times exponents of golden ratio. So this was a preliminary measurement made by myself, and it needs further investigation, online measurements, on-site measurements. So I think they found a very nice way of coronating. And thanks for listening. If there are any questions.
Thanks, Tufan. So if you've got some questions, you can unmute your mic. There's a general question here from Glenn to begin with. If you were to build a phi chamber, what material would you use to construct it?
I would focus on natural organic materials. Ancients used to have like limestones, So it would be nice to have high paramagnetic stones, or it can be wood with high minerals. So basically anything organic, I would suggest, and stay away from aluminum, steel, metals.
Yeah, essentially, maybe high dielectric constant would be a good word there. Just to say, Tufan, I really love it that you discovered that about the coronation layout. In fact, the word corona is exactly what's being developed. And the story was, the king had to literally electrically embed in the land in order to feel the land to develop his corona and embedding. So the electrical function fits the political role of the king, which is to feel the land. I really love that picture, Tufan. Congratulations.
Thank you. I hope we are not going to be censored because of the word that we are talking.
But the corona is perfect.
Right. All right.
Okay, there's another question here from Karen. I want to turn my dressing room into a phi chamber. How would I do that? There you go.
Well,
one would say, like Karen, just work out your golden mean ratio around the phi, around the chamber, or whatever room you're working with. You can imprint the golden mean ratio, and then you can put significant things where the golden mean ratio spiral comes to. That's always going to be the main feature point for any dimension. So you could do that in any, like, living room, kitchen, house plan. You can use golden mean ratio with all of these things. When you put a painting on a wall, you can use the golden mean ratio as well. Do you have any comments on just how to use the golden mean ratio in basic design work?
Yeah, sure. Well, they don't have, you don't have to align all 3 dimensions to golden ratio. Even if you work on just 2 dimensions, meaning you measure the length, and if you can also, I'm not suggesting to break any walls and construct a new one to make it fit, but maybe you could create some portable divisions. A suggestion, of course, it's best to do that while constructing a house. But after doing the construction, well, you can use some portable furniture, maybe.
I think Gerard, do you have a question there? Do you? You can. Have you got your hand up? Have you?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I can't see myself. Well, I noticed that many times there is a phrase which I don't understand so much. Maybe it's semantic, but that is the phrase phase conjugation. That is a central theme. I wonder if you can explain something for better understanding what it means.
Maybe I could just suggest briefly that when recursive adding and multiplying of waves, the wave length and the wave velocities are adding and multiplying. The term for that, some related to genetics, conjugal relations, to conjugate is to recursively interfere, so it refers more to than genetics. The background here is phase conjugate optics, where this started. Phase conjugate optics works in a super high dielectric because the interference is permissive in a very high dielectric. And if that interference is golden ratio, then the interference is constructive. So phase conjugation is perfected by golden ratio in this specific sense in wave mechanics. And phase conjugation in optics is where negentropy and time reversal was first measured.
Tufan, do you want to have a go at also defining phase conjugation?
Yes, in a more simpler way, I would say. We can visualize it as the conjugation of waves at the center, and based on golden ratio, to allow a bioactive field to charge our aura, for example, to make it bigger, I would say, I don't know if this is in line with Dan's explanation.
Yes, and literally an implosion then at that center, which is Planck, and the nature of that implosion specifically is that the charge is released from just transverse inertia to longitudinal compressional, which is more distributable. So that's where the charge goes at center when Einstein first said infinite non-destructive compression is the solution to the unified field. He didn't understand how compression could be infinite and non-destructive, and phase conjugation to Planck precisely answers his quandary.
Thank you.
Dana, you have a question? Can you unmute yourself? There you go. Dana, you have a question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to raise my hand. I'm just listening intently. Thank you.
That's okay. Yeah. Okay, we've got 1 or 2 minutes left. Any more questions?
I just wanted to comment also about Tufan's work with geometric models. You know, Tufan has done a fabulous job making the educational tools available, some things which I could not do because distribution was complicated and messy from here. So I'm really supporting Tufan's work, geometricmodels.com, to share the major tools here. Of course, he had the book, but he has the Star Mother, the model, he's making the donuts and the calipers, and will gradually increase those tools. So Tufan is a major resource in terms of the learning tools and teaching the more introductory way of talking about this using smaller words than I do. So I want to acknowledge Tufan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was a great presentation, Tufan.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roger. Thanks for
Thanks.
inviting me.
Hi. Roger, do you listen me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
There is some time that I don't speak English, but I will try to explain correctly. About consciousness that Ray explained with the water and all this. In meditation, there is I have lived the experience of going a travel inside the heart, and now and then it becomes like a psychedelic trip, looking, watching sacred geometry inside the heart and going inside, and I have experienced sometimes that there's no limit. So the Planck length, that is a minimum. It becomes something very big, and then I imagine I saw another time inside me a galaxy, a solar system, and going inside, I had the experience, or maybe the imagination, to appear in my room from the outside. So there is a trip about the Moebius geometry. There is constantly. So the most micro, it becomes the most macro, and then there is a continuity of reality. So there is the possibility to. So the question is, if there is the possibility to be coherent with all the scales of reality as an experience of consciousness, and that we will see later with Michael Weiss, that with the architecture we can be connected cosmically with the cosmos from the inside to the outside. What can you say about this, Tufan?
Thank you. Well, perfect embedding is a solution to the connection with the higher realms. So if you have a coherent frequency harmonics contained within yourself, then you can very easily communicate with the higher dimensions. And this is one of the definitions that we used for perfect embedding. So we are all connected, as you said, and we can connect with any levels of reality. once we have the pure emotions within us, I would say, during meditation or other experiences. And it's, yeah, beautiful what you have experienced.
If I may, I also thought it was beautiful the way he said that Planck became very large, because it's specifically what we're saying is Planck is the threshold where the compression becomes into the longitudinal array, which is literally a window. And actually, you know, the Mobius, which is non-destructive turning inside out, is pretty much a definition of consciousness, even from Sefer Bereshith. So I think your metaphors are beautiful, sir. Beautiful.
So, I would like to add that that concept that it is said with the Birkeland currents, that where the parameter of time, it doesn't exist. The consciousness can travel instantaneously in every place of the universe with a determinated state of consciousness, of course, you know. So yes, it's a window. It's a window.
And you can be a little more accurate also. Rather than say time doesn't exist, if you know that time is only a name for spin rate, the place of perfect embedding means all spins can converge. So saying all time is present is a way of talking about the fact that all spins have converged. And you're right, that is a perfect unpacking that resulted from perfect packing. Another just point I would make here is that after we observed that Therify.net replicably triggers lucid dreaming, and which is kind of what you're describing, and what we're doing is completing a compression into a longitudinal distribution, the longitudinal squirt gun, as it were. And so that these metaphors fit together both in the psychological and the physics sense. And the fact that you're coherent enough to describe it, I think, is admirable.
Well, thank you, Tufan. I'm going to just stop the recording now.
Stopped.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tufan.
Thanks, Roger.
So, Tufan, do me a favor. Can you quit sharing your screen there?
Great, Tufan.
Sure.
Just great.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you.
Thank you.